Bienvenue sur Métal Maniaques, un balado d'horreur Québec où je, sous-signé Christophe G, m'entretiens avec des métalleux tripeux d'horreur.
Bon vendredi 13 à tous et à toutes. Bienvenue sur Métal Maniaque, épisode 32. Chers auditeurs, auditrices. Donc, je pense que même si ça fait des effets bizarres, je vais remettre les écouteurs comme ça. Vous allez mieux m'entendre. Content de vous retrouver. Merci d'être là encore une fois. 32e épisode. Donc, évidemment, bon, on est un vendredi 13. Ça, c'est trop parfait. Vendredi 13, le mois d'octobre, spécial Halloween. Donc, c'était un moment parfait pour baser un épisode autour de Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat, qui n'est pas le film de Michael Dougherty, sorti dans les années 2000, qui est pourtant excellent, un film à sketch où on reconnaît notre personnage de Sam qui se promène un peu partout à tuer du monde avec son sucre d'orge. Un film qui est très bien foutu. On a encapsulé l'Halloween de façon géniale. Non, mais ici, on parle de métal et d'horreur. Pas de métal dans ce film-là, mais dans le film Trick or Treat de 1986, on a, euh, on a tout ça dans un film qui est passé sous le radar à l'époque, sorti en salle un petit peu. Euh, Juste rapidement, là, le contexte fait que le film ressort. Là, ici, je vous ai montré une copie allemande, retitrée Ragman, qui est à peu près introuvable ici. Hein. Faut le commander, l'importer, tout ça. En Amérique du Nord, il n'y a pas eu de reissue home vidéo depuis un certain temps. Il y avait une pourrie avec une pochette absolument atroce. Vous ne voulez pas celle-là, mais Synapse Film ressortent le film avant la fin de l'année. Normalement, ça devrait être possible de l'avoir en cadeau de Noël dans votre bas de Noël, hein, si vous voulez demander ça à vos proches. Euh, Loadé d'extra en 4K, avec plein d'entrevues. Ils sont en train de finaliser les derniers détails. C'est pour ça qu'il n'y a pas encore de date de sortie. Mais si vous êtes trop pressé et vous voulez revoir le film, vous ne l'avez jamais vu, vous voulez le découvrir, vous pouvez aller voir en salle. Donc, il y a le Ciné-Club Film Society à Montréal qui le présente en 35 mm. Je ne pense même pas que ça avait été présenté à l'époque, dans les années 80, en 86, quand le film est sorti. Donc, le 22 octobre, 18h30, au cinéma VA 114 de l'Université Concordia, donc pour les habitués de Fantasia, là, donc c'est une des salles de l'université. Qu'est-ce que c'est Trick or Treat, à part un film dont la trame sonore du band Fastway, là, je vais essayer de montrer le vinyle, c'est magnifique. Fastway, le groupe du guitariste de Motorhead, Fast Eddie Clark à l'époque. La trame sonore, irréprochable. Un film qui a été réalisé, un slasher surnaturel. Vraiment, on est dans les plates-bandes de Freddy. À l'époque, le 2 venait d'être produit par les mêmes producteurs, semble-t-il. Le réalisateur, c'est Charles Martin Smith, un acteur que vous avez vu dans le film à l'époque, qui avait déjà joué dans American Graffiti, le classique de George Lucas, dans les années, je pense, en 73, 74, qui a réalisé bon, bien avant Star Wars. Euh, il a été aussi dans le film Starman de John Carpenter, dans The Untouchables, hein, le film de mafiosi de Brian De Palma. Donc, et ça, c'était son premier film en tant que réalisateur. Par la suite, il a réalisé un paquet de films, des téléfilms, tout ça. Mais on dirait qu'il était prédestiné à devenir réalisateur parce que le film est vraiment très bien foutu. Il y a même le DOP de ce film-là, qui a gagné un Oscar par la suite pour There Will Be Blood. Il est avec P.T. Anderson. Donc, Trick or Treat, ça look super bien. Des ambiances très cauchemardesques. Hein. On est vraiment dans les plates-bandes de Freddy avec, on voit le personnage de Sammy Kerr ici, là, brûlé, qui est vraiment en mode Motley Crue, Judas Priest, Wasp. Donc, une imagerie très plein de studs, du cuir, des cheveux un peu je dirais spray net. Hein? À l'époque, c'était comme ça que ça se passait. Euh, L'acteur qui jouait ce rôle-là s'appelle Tony Field. Il s'appelait Tony Field. En fait, il jouait le rôle de Sammy Kerr, en français, hein? Sammy Kerr, Sammy Kerr. Est décédé malheureusement en 1995, à l'âge de 36 ans, trop jeune. Il avait joué dans ce film-là, Trick or Treat, où il joue très bien. C'est très physique, hein? Il n'y a pas vraiment de ligne de dialogue. On l'entend chanter, là, c'est pas vraiment lui, mais euh, à l'époque, il était danseur. Il jouait dans des troupes de danse, mais dans des vidéoclips aussi d'artistes très connus comme Lionel Richie, Queen et Michael Jackson. Il a joué dans Beat It puis Thriller quand même. Donc, vous allez le reconnaître ou pas sous sa perruque ou ses gros cheveux.
la star du film, c'est nul autre que Marc Price. Marc Price, si vous étiez fan de sitcom dans les années 80, vous allez le reconnaître. Il jouait le rôle de Skippy aux côtés de Michael J. Fox dans la sitcom Family Ties. Il a joué là, pendant 7 ans, là, de 82 à 89, 51 épisodes. Maintenant, il est comique, un comédien. En fait, il faisait du stand-up comique avant aussi. Donc, il a fait ça toute sa vie. Il tourne. Il est déjà venu à Montréal aussi, apparemment, à Just for Laugh. Euh, il était en tournée d'ailleurs quand on a pu l'avoir en entrevue sur Zoom. Vraiment très cool. Je ne pensais pas que ça allait arriver, là. Ça a été assez long d'avoir une confirmation, mais au final, dernière minute, ça a fonctionné avant la date de tombée là, pour pouvoir produire l'épisode. Donc, très content d'avoir pu jaser avec Marc Price, qu'on n'a pas vu dans beaucoup de films. Il a joué dans un film récent où il joue un rockstar. Allez voir son IMDb, là, il n'y a pas énormément de crédits, mais pour moi, hey, la star Ragman, la star de Trick or Treat, c'est assez hallucinant. Puis, ben, Ryan Waste, hein, un ancien de Metal Maniaques, de, le chanteur, ben, pas chanteur, le guitariste et fondateur de Municipal Waste, a pu l'avoir dans le vidéoclip de la chanson titre du dernier album, Electrified Brain. Il joue le rôle d'une personne qui se fait électrocuter sur la chaise électrique à la Shocker. Dans le début du clip, vous irez voir ça, c'est très, 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 très cool. Sinon, donc, on a cette entrevue-là, très géniale. Michael Felsher, producteur de chez Red Shirt Pictures. Euh, donc, vous avez vu clairement des extras ou des documentaires qui ont été produits au fil des ans, qui sont apparus sur des reissues de Shout Factory, de Synapse. Ça, c'est clair. Lui, il a fondé Red Shirt Pictures au début des années 2000 et il a produit des extras pour Toby Hooper, pour des films de Toby Hooper comme Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 et 2, Eaten Alive. Il a produit des extras aussi pour The Monster Squad, Creepshow, qui est un de ses films préférés, on l'apprend dans la conversation, Evil Dead 2, Halloween 2 et 3, et il est en train de terminer la réalisation. Il a été recruté pour aider Adam Marcus, qui avait réalisé le film Jason Goes to Hell. Ils sont en train de faire un gros documentaire où il relate la production de ce film-là, hein, Friday the 13, le 9e du nom. Donc, Michael Felsher, belle conversation, un gars qui en sait un bon bout sur le cinéma de genre, donc vraiment le fun. J'ai aussi invité Simon Lacroix, mon ami, fan de métal, émérite, qu'on se croise dans de milliers de shows. Là. Justement, on s'est croisé dans le concert de Cannibal Corpse avec Mayhem. C'est là que je lui ai demandé, ça te tente-tu de te retaper Trick or Treat puis venir en jaser avec moi? Il dit, ben oui. Ça n'a pas été trop long qu'il a dit oui, fait que c'était vraiment le fun. Simon Lacroix, évidemment, c'est le cofondateur de Total Crap avec Pascal Pilote. Donc, si vous ne connaissez pas Total Crap, 20 ans de niaiserie télévisuelle, de mauvais films, des beaux programmes où on prend un verre en riant de ces niaiseries-là, puis en les écoutant, nous expliquer où ils ont trouvé, sur quel VHS et tout, au canal communautaire ou autre. Donc, prochaine projection Total Crap au Lion d'Or, hein, le 20 octobre. Sinon, ils vont être à Longueuil aussi, à Saint-Casimir, un peu partout à l'Assomption. Montréal aussi, ils reviennent au début janvier pour la supplémentaire de l'épisode 20e anniversaire. Donc, manquez pas ça. Et au final, je pense que j'ai tout plugué les trucs. C'est parfait. Je vous laisse avec mes entrevues, mon spécial Trick or Treat. Donc, avec des belles conversations avec Simon Lacroix, Michael Felsher et Marc Price. Hey, Simon Lacroix, comment ça va?
Salut, ça va? Ouais, toi?
Toujours, toujours. Hey, on s'est vu en fait semaine passée à un concert de death metal, de métal extrême, de black metal. Belle soirée quand même.
Ouais, ouais, ben, tu sais, comme Mayhem, c'est la première fois que je les voyais, donc j'étais content. Je te dirais que c'est pas la grosse affaire tant qu'à moi, tu sais, point de vue son, tu sais, ça a pris
Hmm,
du temps avant
c'est vrai.
qu'on puisse comprendre que c'était Mayhem, à moins que c'est toujours ça Mayhem, parce que quelqu'un m'avait dit il y a une semaine ou deux avant que ça se pourrait que je sois déçu avec Mayhem, mais bon,
Mais le
c'est ça.
black metal, un peu, des fois, on dirait qu'il s'auto-sabote un peu avec tu sais, l'esthétique sonore tentant que ça sonnait tout le temps le cul, là.
Mais tu sais, comme Cannibal Corpse, ben tu sais, je suis pas déçu, mais je les ai vus l'année d'avant, puis c'était exactement la même affaire. Le
Ouais.
moment où est-ce que le chanteur vient parler à la foule, c'est exactement le même.
Ah ouais.
Il a dit exactement la même affaire. Il a dit, je vous demanderai pas si ça va bien, juste à vous voir aller. Tout a l'air correct. Puis la prochaine tune, ben, it's a song about shooting blood out of your cock, quelque chose comme ça. Puis,
High comme blood.
c'était exactement la même affaire, mais bon.
Ouais.
Mais
Et
tu sais,
il part la cassette. Tu sais, là, c'est comme.
ouais.
Tu sais, c'est du pâté chinois, en fait, à Cannibal Corpse. Là. C'est steak, blended patate. Tu sais que ça va goûter. T'aimes ça. Il y a du rouge en masse. Tu sais, ça marche. Sauf que, tu sais, c'est pas le band qui va t'inspirer. Tu sais, là. Ils font ça
Mhm.
depuis le début des années 90. C'est des vieux de la vieille. Tu sais, c'est pas Gargots. Gargots, là, ils poussent, tu sais, ils poussent l'enveloppe, là, ils nous font ça. Là. Tu sais, c'est des virtuoses, là, le monde qui
Ben
entoure
voilà, Gorgotte, c'était pour ça que j'étais là.
les
Et
filmés.
à cause de la sécurité de l'Olympia, ben, je les ai
Hmm.
manqués. Je suis arrivé à la dernière tourne. Mais bon, hein, ça a l'air qu'à l'Olympia, il faut arriver 3 heures avant que le show commence si on veut rentrer.
Ouais, ben c'est
C'est un
ça, tu
autre
sais,
sujet.
c'est assez infernal. S'il y a des gens de l'Olympia qui nous écoutent, il faudrait que vous uppez votre game. Au niveau de l'entrée, là, vous êtes la seule salle de spectacle qui sont pas capables de faire rentrer les gens d'avance, même si les portes ouvrent 1 heure et demie avant le début du show. La plupart des gens ont manqué Blood Incantation, le premier band. Moi, j'ai été chanceux parce que, bon, média, passe photo, je peux me faufiler, là. Fait que j'ai été assez chanceux pour pogner Blood Incantation que j'avais jamais vu live. Puis c'est assez tight. Eux aussi, ils proposent quelque chose d'original dans le cadre du death. Tu sais, là, on est vraiment dans une espèce de trip un peu cosmique, un peu prog aussi. Tu sais, c'est moins pété, puis éclaté, puis musique actuelle même que Gorguts, parce que ça, on est vraiment dans d'autres sphères. Là. Mais j'ai bien aimé Blood Incantation. Je sais pas si tu connaissais un peu le band, toi, avant.
Un petit peu comme ça, mais pas plus qu'il faut. Mais tu sais, pour ce qui est de Gorgotte, je pense qu'on est dû
Ouais.
pour voir un show headline de
Ouais.
Gorgotte à Montréal. La dernière fois, c'était il y a 10 ans, tu sais, sur la
Mhm.
Tulipe. Fait que, à moins que tu sois revenu headline depuis le temps, là, mais
Je
je...
pense pas, non.
Hmm.
Mais effectivement, fait que EB Montréal, Gorguts mérite un peu plus de temps d'antenne. On veut 1 heure et demie de Gorguts, là. Tu sais, là, Luc Lemay, là, il torche ça. En plus, il est smart. Puis, tu sais, il est là depuis le fucking début des années 90 aussi, là. Tu sais, c'est un des premiers bands de death globalement, là. Tu sais,
Mhm.
c'est assez fou, là. Mais pour la petite parenthèse métal, c'est excellent parce que, bon, je sais, Simon, on se croise dans plein de shows métal. Simon, évidemment, tout le monde le connaît pour Total Crap, les soirées désopilantes où on regarde de la marde télévisuelle et on se bidonne de t'entendre, toi puis Pascal, annoncer, commenter euh, toutes les trouvailles que ça fait trouver. On ne sait trop comment, on ne veut pas trop le savoir non plus, parce que des fois, c'est un peu disgracieux, mais c'est toujours agréable, c'est toujours plaisant. Puis, ben, toi, tu as tout le temps des chandails métal, fait que c'était sûr qu'à un moment donné, j'allais t'inviter sur le show. Puis, tu sais, les films d'horreur, ben, évidemment, t'en manges aussi, tu sais, t'écoutes pas juste des films de marde.
Non, c'est
T'es
sûr,
t'es
faut
un grand
contrebalancer
cinéphile.
un petit peu, là, tu
Ben
sais.
oui. Fait que, tu sais, je trouvais que c'était vraiment là, la belle opportunité. Épisode d'Halloween, 13 octobre, un vendredi 13 en plus, pour jaser d'un film qui a passé sous le radar, ou qui est comme culte, que les gens ont découvert peut-être à super écran ou dans les clubs vidéo sous le nom de Farce ou Festin, où ils ont fini par se commander un DVD allemand qui s'appelle Ragman.
Oh, je savais pas que c'était le nom allemand.
Ouais, ben tu sais, le nom Trick or Treat est écrit en dessous, là.
Mhm.
Puis pour les gens à la maison qui ont vu Trick or Treat, mais le film qui est sorti dans les années 2006-2007 de Michael Dougherty, qui est excellent, un film à sketch, ben c'est pas de ça qu'on parle à soir. On parle.
C'est pas non plus le film de 1982 avec David Carradine, Trick or Treats, avec un S à la fin.
Que je n'ai pas vu. Est-ce que tu as vu ça, toi?
J'ai pas vu non plus. Éventuellement, ça va être sur ma liste, là.
David Carradine, c'est un film d'horreur aussi, hein, c'est un film
Ouais,
d'Halloween.
ouais, ouais.
Ouais. Mais
Mm.
c'est ça, ce film-là, Trick or Treat, 1900, c'est-tu 86?
Ouais,
Oui,
ouais.
86. Dino De Laurentiis. C'est quand même une grosse production pour l'époque, tu sais, à l'époque où les slashers, les Freddy Krueger cartonnaient. Euh, on arrive avec une proposition qu'on n'est pas tellement loin quand même de l'univers de Freddy Krueger, mais on est dans quelque chose de beaucoup plus headbanger. Toi,
Ouais, mais
tu te rappelles la première fois que tu l'as vu, toi?
c'est sûr que je l'ai vu à super écran. Je l'ai vu à l'époque, puis à l'époque que je tripais Métal, j'étais au secondaire, c'était le film parfait pour moi. Tu sais, je suis un tripeux de films d'horreur, tripeux métal, surtout à l'époque.
Mhm.
J'avais encore le métal, mais tu sais,
Ben oui.
j'ai largué mon affaire maintenant. Je suis dans le punk aussi, puis un peu tout.
Ben
Mais
oui.
sauf que ça, à l'époque, tu sais, j'étais au secondaire 1 ou 2, je sais pas, 86, j'ai peut-être vu en 87, là, ça n'a pas sorti l'année que
Non,
ça
c'est
a sorti
ça.
au cinéma. Puis, ben, c'est ça, tu sais, je suis au secondaire.
Tu vivais ce que Ragman vivait un peu, là.
Ouais, un
Tu
peu,
faisais-tu le
oui.
boulier?
Un petit peu, oui.
Ouais?
Puis je me suis
OK.
rappelé en l'écoutant que si c'était en secondaire 1 ou 2, j'étais probablement dans les premiers de l'école à me promener avec un T-shirt métal. Il y en avait deux. En fait, quand j'étais en secondaire 1, je crois, il y en avait deux autres. Oui, ils étaient en secondaire 2 à l'époque. C'était l'école où j'allais au secondaire. C'est juste un et deux. Après ça, tu
OK.
avais la polyvalente. J'étais à Québec à l'époque, à Charlebourg.
OK.
Puis, ben, c'est ça, au début, il y a bien du monde qui riait de moi parce que j'avais des T-shirts métal. Puis
Ouais.
2, 3 mois après, il y en avait tous chacun, tu sais, parce que tu sais, c'est vraiment l'année que le métal s'est mis
Ça
à
a
pogner.
explosé, là. Ouais, ouais.
Musique Plus est arrivé, Much Music aussi.
Mhm.
On a eu droit à tous les vidéos métal. On s'est mis à triper sur Twisted Sister parce qu'on le voyait à la télé.
Ben
Puis
oui.
les clips jouaient beaucoup dans notre choix musical, si on peut dire, là,
Mhm,
dans,
mhm.
dans la nouvelle musique qu'on écoutait. Puis c'est aussi. Certains des bands que je vais te nommer, les tunes sont sortis après, mais c'est à peu près l'époque aussi que j'ai trippé ces affaires comme Avant Out d'Halloween ou Beneath the Wheel de DRI ou Les
Ah,
Immortels, Me Against the World. C'est vraiment le genre de tune que tu t'identifies, tu es au secondaire, puis là, tu sens que tout le monde est contre toi, puis que
mhm.
tu veux vivre autre chose qu'aller à l'école parce que tu es obligé, tu sais.
Ben oui, c'est ça. Puis t'es ado, tu te cherches, tu sais, tu cherches une identité. Puis là, t'as ces tunes-là qui sont en crise, comme toi, puis
Hmm.
qui parlent, puis qui te font, tu sais, c'est très cathartique quand même, le métal. Tu sais, les films d'horreur aussi, à quelque part, tu sais, ça te fait sortir, ça fait sortir le méchant, tu sais. Tu sais, c'est pas pour rien que je pense que c'est la crowd metal, c'est une des crowds les plus pacifistes, tu sais,
Mhm.
pacifiques là, qui existent, tu sais. Puis c'est un peu, tu sais, j'allais dire contradictoire dans le sens que, tu sais, il y a quand même des gros mosh pits, puis ça se fonce dedans, mais c'est pas de la violence, c'est de la danse contact, là, tu sais. Ben, pas à 10 piastres, là, mais c'est
Quelqu'un qui tombe à terre, le monde va le relever, etc., etc., tu sais, je veux dire, puis
exact.
il n'y a personne qui le fait violemment, tu sais,
À
pour...
part deux, trois morons, là, mais
oui,
tu sais,
bon, tu sais, là, tu sais, comme
ils se font
toujours
mettre dans le
partout.
coin par un gros, puis tu sais, ça se
Ouais,
passe
ils se font
bien.
ramasser assez vite, normalement. Ils se font tasser parce que, tu sais, c'est pas l'esprit qui est là d'abord et avant tout, tu
Non,
sais.
c'est ça. Puis comme tu disais, tu sais, à l'époque, tu sais, avant que ça devienne un phénomène plus mainstream, parce qu'évidemment, mon Metallica en 91, là, ça a fait exploser le métal. Avant ça, évidemment, le air metal cartonnait, le heavy metal classique, tu sais, les Motley Crue, puis les Poison, puis tu sais, ceux-là que les dudes, ils pensaient que c'était des chicks là, sur Sunset Strip. Euh, mais tu sais, c'est devenu tellement populaire, le métal, mais tu sais, quand ce film-là est sorti en 86, tu sais, il y a les Metallica, c'était
C'est
Master of
ça, ouais.
Puppets. Fait que tu sais, ça commençait à remplir des salles de dimensions correctes, les bands qui étaient plus élevées, tu sais. Puis toi, quand tu as vu ce film-là, la soundtrack, l'imagerie, les posters, tu trouvais-tu que ça faisait du sens? Tu sais, est-ce que ça résonnait ou tu trouvais que c'était une caricature?
Non, ça faisait du sens. Puis en plus, tu sais, c'est Fastway avec le guitariste de Motorhead. Tu sais, à l'époque, remarque que je savais pas qu'il avait été dans Motorhead. Tu sais, je me souviens que mon frère avait la trame sonore, puis on l'écoutait souvent. Euh, mais c'est ça, tu sais, c'est pas une parodie de métal comme ça aurait peut-être pu être. Puis ça respecte, tu sais, l'esprit que c'est
Mhm.
supposé d'être, puis ça respecte aussi l'époque. Puis c'est vraiment un film qui est ancré dans son époque, je trouve.
Ouais.
Euh, tu sais, on voudrait faire un film qui se passe en 86 dans le métal, un film d'horreur, puis ça serait en 2023, puis ça serait probablement ce film-là qui sortirait, tu sais.
Ouais, ils ont comme encapsulé l'époque, puis sont allés chercher, tu sais, des caméos juste. trop parfait, là. Tu sais, Gene
Mhm.
Simmons, tu sais, qui faisait son kaki, tu sais, il était pas trop loin de la personne qui est, tu sais, mais le DJ, parce que, tu sais, évidemment, Kiss, ça a influencé tous les métalleux, tu sais, c'est parti de là, puis le côté théâtral, tout ça, fait que c'est comme le parrain un peu. Puis, tu sais, t'as les racines du métal au niveau du son avec Sabbath, tu sais, Ozzy qui est là en preacher, hein, c'est
Oui,
tellement
puis
génial.
c'est sûr qu'Ozzy a souvent été la cible des preachers. Donc, pour
Mhm.
lui, tu sais, de faire à l'écran un preacher, c'est que c'est juste parfait. Tu sais. Tout
Ouais,
ce qu'il dit, c'est probablement tout ce qui a déjà été dit sur lui. Tu sais.
ouais, ouais,
Quand
ouais.
on le voit à la télé dans le film. Là, tu sais.
Exact, exact. Non, c'est ça, puis c'était comme un peu un doigt d'honneur pour lui, de dire hey, fuck it, tu sais, je vais lui montrer. Puis en plus, c'est comme lui qui a mis du gaz sur le feu un peu en décapitant des chauves-souris par erreur ou des colons parce qu'il était trop défoncé. Puis, tu sais, le Prince of Darkness, puis, tu sais, Bark at the Moon. Fait que, tu sais, il y avait comme tout ça, toute cette aura-là autour de Ozzy, que c'est comme le monstre sacré du métal. Là, tu le mets dans ce film-là, là. Hey, de tous les métalleux, ils font OK, c'est quoi ce film-là? Puis comme tu dis, tu sais, c'est comme c'était respectueux, même si le réalisateur, c'est probablement pas un métalleux, mais je pense qu'il y avait assez de métalleux dans l'équipe où, au minimum, tu sais, peut-être des consultants métal pour dire ouais, ouais, ce poster-là, tu peux mettre ça, mais lui, non, Poison, enlève-les. Tu sais, le genre, tu sais, il y a dû avoir quand même quelqu'un qui a choisi, tu sais, parce que c'était pas juste des posters métal, c'était comme des posters de bons bands métal, tu sais. Fait
Ce qui
que,
est cool aussi qu'Ozzy soit là, ben, c'est que le méchant du film, tu sais, Sammy Cœur, ben, tu sais, il mange des têtes de serpent. Fait que,
ouais, ouais, ouais.
il y a un parallèle avec Ozzy aussi à quelque part. Tu sais, mais Ozzy n'était pas aussi extrême ou tu sais, s'il l'a été, c'est sans le vouloir. Tu sais, c'est pas un Gigi Allen non plus. Là, tu sais. Mais,
Ouais,
euh, mais c'est ça, tu sais, il y a comme un parallèle aussi
ouais,
avec tu sais,
ouais, tout à
le
fait.
chanteur
Ouais.
supposément satanique.
Ouais, ouais. Puis tu sais, le Satanic Panic, là, tu sais, on le sait, là, tu sais, vraiment là, dans les années 80, le Parental Advisory, c'est arrivé parce que les parents ben, tripaient, ah, les bands métal, c'est le mal. Puis tu sais, c'est souvent la cible, c'était quoi? C'était Judas Priest, c'était Twisted Sisters, tu sais, c'était comme,
Mhm.
c'était pas les bands qui étaient les plus hargneux au niveau des lyrics, puis tu sais, là, mais connaissaient rien, là. Tu sais, ceux qui ont sorti le PRMC, là, tu sais, puis le procès qu'il y a eu, tu sais, c'était vraiment là, un gros truc. Fait que là, évidemment, il y a eu des films dans cette veine-là qui ont popé. Puis ce film-là, tu sais, c'était vraiment. C'est un beau petit bijou. Tu sais, moi, je trouve, là, tu l'as réécouté récemment, là, quand je
Ouais, en fait,
t'ai.
je l'ai
Ouais,
écouté hier, tu sais, juste pour me mettre dedans, mais je l'avais vu souvent quand
ben
même.
oui.
Puis, tu sais, j'ai vu beaucoup de parallèles en le regardant avec d'autres films de la même époque ou un peu avant. J'ai même vu un parallèle avec Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Ah
Parce
oui,
qu'à la fin, le gars qui tripe sur Sammy Cœur, il essaie
ouais.
d'arrêter la diffusion de
Oui,
l'album de
c'est vrai.
Sammy Cœur. Puis dans Halloween 3, ben, le gars essaie d'arrêter la diffusion de l'émission qui a rapport avec les masques parce
Ouais,
que
ouais, ouais, ouais.
c'est le mal va rentrer dans nos maisons. C'est la même affaire dans Trick or Treat. C'est qu'à travers Sammy Cœur et sa musique, le mal va rentrer dans nos maisons. Donc, il faut arrêter ça.
Ouais, ouais, ouais. Non, mais c'est vrai, c'est comme la métaphore. Puis, ouais, puis il a clairement vu Halloween 3, qui est aussi un petit bijou sous-estimé, mal aimé hein, au fil des ans, parce que, évidemment, Michael Myers n'était pas dans le film. Puis là, oh, mais pourquoi Michael Myers n'est pas dedans? Mais là, il n'est pas dedans parce que là, il fallait prendre un break, tu sais. Puis c'est super bon.
Ben, en fait, Halloween 3, c'est excellent. Puis ça serait encore plus un classique si c'était pas un Halloween. Mais
Ouais.
bon, qu'est-ce que tu
Ou,
veux faire?
tu sais, c'est le 3 le problème, je pense. Ça aurait dû être Halloween présent ou le Halloween 2. Season of the Witch. Tu sais, le 3 c'est comme, hey, c'est la suite, mais non, c'est pas la suite. C'est comme parallèle. Tu sais. Fait que, tu sais, je pense au niveau du marketing qu'ils sont un peu chez les mains, là, mais tu sais, qu'est-ce que tu veux? C'est devenu un film culte. Il y a bien des films que, tu sais, ça prend 10 ans, 20 ans, puis ça devient ce que c'est. Comme ça, là, ça va sortir en 4K, avec plein d'extras que j'ai vraiment hâte de voir. Euh, pour les gens qui ne l'ont jamais vu à la maison, là, comment tu le vendrais, toi, Trick or Treat, là?
Comment je vendrais ça? Tu veux dire en racontant l'histoire ou en...
Non, ben, qu'est-ce que ça serait pour quel genre de public, mettons, tu sais, sans
Euh,
trop en dire, là?
ben, c'est un film d'Halloween, premièrement, tu sais, qui parle de la fête de l'Halloween.
Mhm.
Puis c'est un film métal qui s'inscrit dans la lignée des autres films métal de l'époque. Tu sais, exemple, il y a un moment où est-ce que tu sors du film puis tu es quasiment dans un vidéoclip avec le band qui fait la toune. Mais bon, dans ce cas-ci, c'est pas le vrai band qui fait la toune, là. C'est Samy Cœur qui fait un spectacle
Ouais.
dans la fin du film. Mais dans tous ces films-là, métal, horreur, il y a toujours un bout où est-ce que c'est soit un vidéoclip ou un band qui font un show. Tu sais, il y a ça dans Rock'n'Roll Nightmare avec Thor, il y a ça dans Hack Lantern avec le band DC Lacroix qui, je sais pas si ça se dit de même en anglais, là, mais qui font la tune Devil's Son. Je sais pas si tu as déjà vu ça,
Non.
Hack Lantern. Film de 88, c'est pas super bon, mais le bout où est-ce qu'il y a le vidéoclip avec le band DC Lacroix qui était avec c'est une fille qui chante dans le band,
OK.
c'est excellent.
Ah
C'est
ouais.
le bout du film qu'il faut voir. Au
OK.
pire, tu checkes sur YouTube juste le vidéoclip, puis c'est pas mal le bout que je te parle.
OK. Cool, 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 cool.
Mais tu sais, dans ce genre de, tu sais, dans Black Roses de John Fasano aussi, ça commence d'ailleurs avec le moment où est-ce que tu as la tune de Lizzie Borden, Me Against the World, mais tu as justement le band qui fait un show, tu sais. Mais en fait, euh, Black Roses de John Fasano, c'est comme une version pauvre de Trick or Treat d'ailleurs. Parce
Ah
que
ouais,
c'est
hein?
même problématique. Tu as un band qui va venir faire un show à l'école secondaire, puis ben, en fin de compte, il y a du monde qui ne veulent pas ou c'est annulé à cause de peu importe quelle raison. Dans le cas de Trick or Treat, ben, il ne voulait pas, mais aussi le gars, il est mort. Fait
Ouais.
que- Mais en fait, c'est ça, c'est si tu veux voir un film qui s'inscrit, comme je disais tantôt, qui s'inscrit vraiment dans l'époque des années 80, des films d'horreur, métal, ben c'est exactement le film pour toi. Puis c'est quand même dans tous les films métal, je trouve, des années 80, c'est pas mal dans la coche au-dessus, là, tu sais.
Mhm.
C'est meilleur que tous ceux que je viens de nommer, là,
Ouais.
tu sais.
Ouais, parce que, tu sais, comme on disait tantôt, tu sais, des fois, ça sombre dans la caricature un peu. Tu sais, on est
Ouais.
vraiment dans des gros clichés métal, puis des fois, ça sonne fake. Puis, tu sais, souvent aussi des musiciens qui sont joués par des acteurs. Tu sais, là, on n'est pas du quand tu es un mélomane dans la vie, là, tu regardes ça, tu fais comment? Quel drummer, il fait n'importe quoi. Puis, tu sais, ça fait comme un peu décroché un peu des fois, là. Mais dans ce film-là, tu sais, je trouvais que Sam Kerr, il y avait une bonne dégaine de frontman. Tu sais, il aurait pu être un bon frontman. Je ne sais pas si je
Mhm.
savais chanter, là, mais il aurait pu être un bon frontman métal. Puis c'est drôle parce que ça, c'était un danseur tu sais, qui jouait dans des vidéoclips, genre de Michael Jackson. Il a joué dans plein de gros vidéoclips. Puis ça a été ça, un des seuls rôles où il jouait un- un rôle de personnage, tu sais, dans un film, puis il est mort très jeune, genre à 36 ans. Fait que, tu sais, c'est comme un peu, tu sais, son plus grand rôle, tu sais. Puis, il est cool, Sam Maker, là, moi, j'aime ça. Moi, un genre de métalleux. Il est un peu peroxydé, hein. Il a quand même les cheveux avec du périnette, là, tu sais, on s'entend, là.
Un peu
Mais,
la Wasp, mettons, là, tu sais.
ouais, ouais, c'est vrai. Wasp, on n'est pas loin de ça. Puis, brûlé à la Freddy, puis il y a de l'éclair un peu. Tu sais, ça prédestinait un peu Shocker, là, à certains
Mhm.
égards, là, tu sais. Cool,
Puis,
cool.
tu sais, comparé à d'autres films que j'ai nommés, tu sais, qui sont
Ouais.
pas mal des So Bad It's Good, moi, je ne mettrais pas Trick or Treat dans cette catégorie-là. C'est quand même un film assez, moi, que j'adore, qui est assez bon, tu sais.
C'est beau aussi, c'est bien filmé, il y a des plans
Mhm.
de vue, tu sais,
C'est sûr
vraiment
qu'il
cool.
y a quelques petites affaires, tu sais, qui sont un peu, tu sais, le scénario coupe les coins ronds, si on peut
Ouais,
dire. Tu sais, comme exemple, tu sais, le coke il tombe sur le disque que,
ouais,
ben, Gene Simmons avait donné la dernière copie du
ouais,
disque de Sammy Cœur. Puis là, ça fait en sorte que décharge électrique, puis là, Sammy Cœur, il sort finalement du disque, puis il peut aller tuer lui-même
ouais,
les
ouais, ouais.
personnes. Donc, c'est sûr que ça, tu sais, c'est un peu tiré par les cheveux, mais bon, on est dans un film d'horreur, là, on
C'est
s'entend que
ça. Suspension of
c'est-
disbelief, on y croit. C'est
exactement,
correct, tu sais.
t'es pas obligé, tu sais,
Ouais.
on n'est pas obligé que ça soit réaliste. Tant que dans l'univers du film, ça fonctionne,
Ouais.
ben,
Mais
c'est
toi,
bien
t'étais
pour
là, puis
ça.
tu regardais ça. Wow.
Ouais, c'est juste que quand tu y penses après, tu sais,
Ouais.
dans le film, quand tu le regardes sur le coup, c'est comme, ah, OK, tu sais, il y a des éclairs, puis tout, puis bon, il sort, puis...
Moi, j'aurais pris un Pepsi, hein, parce que, tu sais, Suicidal Tendencies, hein, mais tu sais,
Ah ouais.
c'est juste moi. Euh, Fait que, ben cool. Hey, merci pour d'avoir pris le temps, Simon. Un petit moment très bref là, pour jaser de Trick or Treat. Hein, puis justement, un prétexte pour te dire réécoute donc ce film-là, puis viens en parler avec moi. Tu sais, là. Des fois, on a juste besoin de ça pour réécouter un film que ça fait longtemps qu'on n'a pas vu.
Ben, ça valait la peine. Ben, j'ai écouté la version tu sais, HD. Tu sais, puis moi, j'avais juste vu à l'époque tu sais, en VHS et je l'ai
Ouais,
revu dans les dernières années sur Frisson, la version française. Mais là,
ouais.
j'ai écouté la version anglaise, tu sais, restaurée. Donc, tu sais,
Uh-huh.
j'étais content de le redécouvrir, tu sais, comme dans la bonne version qu'il faut le voir.
Ouais, ben c'est à
Ben, c'est
l'époque,
ça le
tu sais,
trip
on
avec
l'a
les
pas vu au cinéma,
restaurations.
tu sais.
C'est ça le trip avec les
Ouais.
restaurations maintenant, c'est qu'on voit, on peut voir finalement les films dans la version qu'il fallait les voir. Tu sais, parce qu'à l'époque, tu sais, en
C'était.
VHS, dans la télé cathodique, on était super contents, on adore les VHS, mais on
Ouais.
s'entend que des fois que les plats délavés ou tu sais,
Ouais.
etc.,
Puis
etc.,
c'est
ben,
croppé aussi, tu sais, des fois,
ah
il y en a qui
oui.
font des beaux scopes, là, puis là, tu coupes un personnage à droite, puis tu sais, c'est comme,
Mhm.
c'est pas la vision du réalisateur, là, tu sais, ils ont fait ça pour que ça fitte dans la TV, ils disent, hein, formatted to fit your TV, mais, tu sais, puis à l'époque, bon, on s'en crisse un peu plus, mais on est plus cinéphile, puis on veut voir qu'est-ce que c'était supposé d'être, tu sais, parce que, tu sais, moi aussi, je l'ai vu en français la première fois, puis c'est cool, là, l'accent, ça m'écure, ça m'écure. Ma blonde, elle disait, il dit-tu ça m'écœure, tu sais?
Moi, je pensais que c'était cœur, C-O-E-U-R, tu sais.
Ah oui.
Mais là, puis à l'époque, tu sais, j'avais pas vu la version anglaise. Et que là, je me demandais c'était quoi en anglais. Est-ce que Sammy Art? Mais pourquoi Art? Tu
Ah
sais.
ouais, hein? C'est pas
Mais
très
là,
métal,
éventuellement.
tu sais.
Non, c'est ça, tu sais. Fait que là, je me disais, y avait-tu un autre nom? Puis là, en fait, donc, c'est U-R-R, là.
Ouais, ouais, ouais. Ouais, fait qu'on va pouvoir écouter plein d'extras quand ça va sortir. Puis, en tout cas, apparemment que ça va sortir d'ici à la fin de l'année. Fait que, à suivre. Hey, merci Simon. On se recroise
Merci.
clairement, peut-être à Space dans un concert métal prochainement. D'après moi, ça devrait arriver dans pas trop long.
Oh, ouais, sûrement, j'ai des billets d'acheter pour quelques concerts métal.
Parfait. Puis tout le monde à la maison, si vous ne connaissez pas Total Crap, là, allez là. Si vous voulez rire, un bon coup, tu ne files pas un soir, puis là, il y a Total Crap qui joue. C'est sérieux, là, c'est un remède. Tu vas pas rire. Tu sais, c'est comme un peu impossible parce que des fois, c'est tellement cringe là, ce que vous trouvez là, que c'est sérieux. Tu sais, il y a des trucs, là, tu sais, on peut, c'est même pas, je peux même pas suggérer rien, parce que des fois, bon, il y a des trucs qui sont pas recommandables, là, mais la globalité de ces programmes-là, c'est du bonbon, là, pour vrai. Là. Hey, 20 ans que vous faites ça?
Oui, on a en fait notre 20e anniversaire cette année. D'ailleurs, la supplémentaire du 20e anniversaire va être le 20 janvier au Club Soda, mais tant qu'à faire des plugs, ben, on va
Ben
être le
oui.
20 octobre au Lion d'Or. Puis il reste des
Ah,
billets pour les deux shows.
parfait, ça, ben, pour vrai. Puis c'est pas une thématique Halloween, le 20 octobre. Là.
Non, non,
Il y a tout le temps
non.
des films d'horreur un peu, là, mais.
Oui, ben, tu sais, il y a toujours des clins d'œil, oui, aux films d'horreur, parce que, tu sais, il y a beaucoup de films d'horreur qui sont des So Bad It's Good, donc, tu
Mhm.
sais. Mais peut-être qu'un jour, on ferait un spécial horreur,
Ah, vous
mais...
n'avez jamais fait, hein?
Non, c'est ça, mais en même temps,
Spécial métal, ça, c'est déjà arrivé.
oui, on a
Hein?
fait, ouais, en fait spécial métal, spécial sexe, spécial lutte deux fois, tu sais.
Mais le
Spécial
spécial
années
métal,
80.
là, le spécial métal, là, c'était avec, comment il s'appelle, lui, avec des pics, là?
Ouais, on a fait venir Pile Driver en show.
C'est ça, hein?
Ouais, c'est
Puis,
excellent. Puis
ouais,
il
ouais,
a
ouais.
donné tout un show. Puis, tu sais, pour nous, tu sais, Pile Driver, on trouve ça bon, mais on trouvait que l'esthétique, ça allait fitter avec la soirée.
Ouais,
Mais il a donné tout un show, autant au Club Soda qu'à l'after show qu'il y avait eu après aux
au
Catacombes.
catacombe. Thor aussi, hein, justement, tantôt, tu parlais de Rock'n'Roll Nightmare. Thor est venu aussi à une
Ouais,
soirée Total Crap.
il a fait venir tard à Montréal, puis par après, quand je les ai vus, quand il y a eu le lancement du documentaire I Am Thor à Fantasia, lui
Mhm.
et son guitariste Steve Price étaient là, puis ils ont dit les deux que c'était un des meilleurs shows qu'ils avaient fait de jouer au Club Soda, puis après ça au
Au
Catacombe.
catacombe.
Ils
Ah ouais.
s'en souviennent encore comme si c'était un de leurs bons shows, puis pourtant, dans le contexte qu'on les invitait, fallait qu'ils soient, tu sais,
Willing, tu sais, autodérision quand même. Tu sais.
exactement,
Mhm.
mais tard, il l'est aussi.
Ouais. Ben, tu sais, il amène des masques en caoutchouc d'Halloween
Ouais.
à 2 piastres, puis c'est des costumes de 5 pour lui. Fait que, tu sais, il faut que tu sois. Il faut que tu sois dans le game, dans le joke, là. Tu sais, là, tu sais que le monde va rire là, de ça parce que, tu sais, C'est à petit budget, comme on dit. Mais c'est le fun de voir des passionnés de même, puis que vous êtes capable de les convaincre de venir. Comme Gaston Lepage qui vient déconner pendant 1 heure quasiment sur le stage à parler de relever le défi. Moi, je pensais jamais vivre ça dans ma vie, puis je l'ai recroisé après dans une soirée de vrai cinéma. Euh, C'était un documentaire sur euh, André Forcier. Puis, il avait joué dedans, il était à la première, en tout cas, peu importe. Puis, Gaston Lepage, il dit, hey, à la soirée de Total Crap, j'ai tellement ri. Il a relevé le défi, c'était incroyable. Puis, il y avait Roy Dupuis à côté de moi, il y avait Gaston Lepage. Puis là, Gaston Lepage, il comptait les anecdotes, là, il comptait ses préférés. Là, moi, je riais, je me tapais ses cuisses. Là, il y avait Roy Dupuis qui était là, barbu, puis qui essayait de contenir son rire. Tu sais, tout un peu sérieux, là. C'était un beau moment. En
Ah,
tout cas,
cool.
hey, merci Simon pour tous les faux rires que tu génères via avec Pascal, via Total Crap. Puis ben, on se revoit bien vite.
Ouais, à la prochaine. Mais merci de m'avoir accueilli.
Salut Simon.
Allez.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
It was nice to meet you. Sorry I'm a little late.
No worries. 5 minutes, it's nothing. When we're about to talk about one of the greatest metal and horror movie of all times. First of all, that's a podcast about, my favorite things in life, cinema and music, but especially horror and metal. And that movie is exactly it. But that was more a way of finding a context or a concept to find people that are into metal and horror. And so I'll ask, the question that kills, are you a metalhead, Michael?
No, I've not really traditionally been a metalhead. No. Heavy metal music was something that when I was growing up, I enjoyed.
Okay.
And it was certainly something that was attractive to me I guess you could call it from a presentation value, because the music was so expressive and very loud, and the costuming and the attitude and the stage presentation. I mean, everything from, Kiss wasn't really heavy metal, but there was certainly, in terms of the, people like Ozzy and, Motley Crue was coming up big when I was a kid. And, it was it was considered sort of a dangerous form of music. It's like, that's edgy stuff. Yeah. And so at first I wasn't really attracted to it, but then as I got into horror, certainly there was a period there where the two were intertwined quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so I was certainly very appreciative of it after I became a horror fan, more than I was beforehand, I think, certainly.
Okay. So in this case, horror came first in your life.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Can you remember the first, horror thing? Could be comics, could be, I don't know, maybe a painting on a wall, a movie. What was the first scary thing that you fell in love with?
It's hard for me to remember what the first thing that I ever saw that scared me.
Mm-hmm.
But before I got into horror films, I was pretty easy, to freak out in terms of in movies. I mean, I was never wanted to see anything like Alien or anything when I was growing up. I was much more of a Star Wars kid.
Mm-hmm.
But it was strange. Like, when I would see Star Trek 2, for example, I could handle the scene where the little creatures come out of Chekhov's ear, and there's blood and stuff like that. I could handle that, but the scene of it going into the ear, I couldn't handle. I would always run out of the theater when that happened and come back. For some reason, that was, or in Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Marion's, in the well of the souls and all the skeletons come out, and I couldn't handle that. But then it was later on when I watched Creepshow, which was really the first horror movie that I saw. Suddenly it was like my first shot of heroin. It was like, oh, what's this? I want more of that. And that led to Dawn of the Dead. And then it led to, that was my gateway drug into, so then it became much more of a, hey, I want more of this thing,
Yeah, and Creepshow is such a great movie to get hooked on because
Yeah.
you got it all. There's so many stories and the
Yeah, it
humor.
really is. It's like a Whitman sampler of horror in there. If you
Yeah.
don't like this one, you'll like the next one.
Mhm.
And it was certainly a situation where it's like, well, who's this? I already knew who Stephen King was at that time because I started reading a couple of his books.
Okay.
I had read Cujo and I read The Shining,
Oh yeah.
and I had
And
seen The
how old
Shining.
were you? You were quite young, like 10
Oh,
or so?
10,
Yeah.
11, somewhere in there. Yeah. Can't remember the exact order, but and I had seen the Dead Zone movie with my grandmother because she had read the book and had
Okay.
liked the book. So we went and saw that in the theater. So that was the first horror movie I think that I saw in a theater.
A
But
Cronenberg movie. That's pretty cool.
yeah, and certainly more. It was, it's weird. Dead Zone was considered sort of a mainstream effort for
Yeah.
him, but I still think that's as Cronenberg a movie as you're ever going to see.
Definitely.
Uh,
The same themes and it's brilliant.
yeah, oh, it is. I
He's a
love that
genius.
movie. I love that movie. And then I got to produce a Blu-ray of that a couple years ago, which was a
Oh,
real thrill.
wow. And
Yeah.
you did that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big Cronenberg fan. I'm Canadian, of course. He's the greatest Canadian director of all time.
Yeah, yeah.
And did you get to meet the guy?
I met him once at a Fangoria convention. That was the only time I ever got to meet him. He doesn't do
No,
interviews and special
not
features
much.
as much as he used to.
Hmm.
But he did do. I've done a few of his films. I did Shivers, and
Hmm.
I've done Dead Zone, and I did a little something for The Brood and Videodrome, and a couple others. Dead Ringers, I did.
Hmm.
So there have been a few I've gotten to work on over the years. He's one of my favorites. He always has been.
Yeah, and it must be such a treat for you to be able to kind of, pay homage to those great, oeuvres,
Oh,
you know.
it's an honor. Are you kidding? It's because these are the guys making the movies while I was growing up. You know, David Cronenberg and of course George Romero and John Carpenter and Joe Dante and Toby Hooper, Wes Craven, all these guys. And
Yeah,
I've
the
gotten to work
masters.
with and with the maybe one or two small exceptions, I've gotten to work with all of them in one form or another, which has been really incredible.
Did you always knew you were to work on in cinema in some ways when you were growing up?
I knew I wanted to become a director or become interested or involved in the making of movies when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was 8 years old.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
the spark.
that was the one that lit the fuse. I know, and and I don't want to say that I knew exactly what my career was going to be, and I understood film theory when I was 8, but I do remember that movie. After I saw it the first time, and then maybe even a second time, I started going, well, who's the director of photography? What does an editor do? That was the movie that made me want to know how the sausage was made. I was just like
Nice.
something. How did they do this? So what are so that one I certainly feel was the one that kind of threw the doors open. So
Mhm.
yeah, from a very young age, cinema or movies were pretty much all it was for me. It was all it was about.
And you mentioned that Spielberg film, and it got art, it got adventure, it got humor, it got
Oh, Raiders has got everything. Yeah, Raiders is one of those movies, and it's a perfect encapsulation of how to do an action film with
mm,
heart and with intelligence and real characters and real stakes. And that movie is a perfectly balanced three-course meal. It is just, and it's has not gotten. It has actually increased in value and for me over the years instead of because sometimes when you see a movie when you're a kid, you go
yeah,
back and revisit it and don't you go, oh God, what was wrong with me?
yeah.
Whereas with this one, it ages like a fine wine or
And Spielberg had already directed a few films before that, so he was like getting his chops, and he was
oh, I
like,
mean, he had done, yeah. I mean, but it was interesting looking at it historically. Raiders was he did that coming off of a huge flop for him, which was 1941.
41. Oh yeah, yeah,
So he was kind of licking his wounds at the time, and then George Lucas said, "Hey, let's go do this idea I have." And Raiders, the first Raiders was not a big film in terms of its budget or schedule. It was, a well budgeted
yeah.
film, but it was not, the biggest movie ever made at that
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
And it ended up being the thing that sort of reminded everybody, oh, this guy's really good.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's right, okay.
And as you said, that was your gateway drug. And, to me, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I've been trying to push a few, scary things, but she's kind of scared easily. But,
Mhm.
the Indiana Jones movie, it works. It works really well. Of course, Ghostbusters and Gremlins,
Well, 80, yeah.
and-
I mean, it was interesting that year, 1984, when
Mm,
Temple of Doom came out,
yeah.
and Gremlins and Ghostbusters. That was sort of a change. The tide sort of shifted then, because it was Temple of Doom and Gremlins that really sort of got the parents groups up in arms, because it's like these movies are too violent for
Yeah.
PG.
Yeah.
And because in Gremlins, you got Gremlins getting shut in the microwave and blown up, and in Temple of Doom, people's hearts are getting pulled out of their chest. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it was later that year that those two films in particular were the reason that the PG-13 came
Mhm.
about.
That's
And
right.
Spielberg, for years, has kind of run away from Temple of Doom. He's always kind of
Oh, yeah.
apologized for it. And I wish he wouldn't do that, because I think Temple of Doom is by far the
The best
best
one of
Indiana Jones
Yeah.
sequel.
Same here.
It's the
Love it.
only one, in my view, that's not chasing Raiders of the Lost Ark. It has its own view, its own viewpoint, its own style, its own tone.
And it's a prequel, and nobody done
It
that
is a prequel,
before.
which
It's
was,
cool.
yeah, and it's a prequel. I wish they had said it a couple of years ahead instead of just like 1 year ahead of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Because the character that we see in Temple of Doom is much more craven, much more of a mercenary kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit of a switch to go from that, like, because I think the film's set in like 1935, and 36 is when Raiders is set. So it's like, wow, he goes through,
Mm-hmm.
that's a bit of a switch. But still,
Yeah.
I really,
I love it.
really
Love
love Temple of Doom a lot. I mean, not that it's not, I think Kate Capshaw gives a good performance, even though the Willie Scott character, there's at times like, ugh, okay.
Yeah, she screams too much, but
Yeah,
it works.
But it was different. They went for a different style and aesthetic than Raiders. Every other of the Indiana Jones movies has been chasing Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to replicate what specifically that movie did.
Yeah.
And Temple of Doom wasn't doing that.
No, I agree, man. And a few years later, Trick or Treat that came out, and surfing the wave of the satanic panic that was happening back then with the trials.
There was all that talk about the parental guidance suggested stickers, and the Tipper Gore was leading this movement to give and it was
Dee Snider was in court, and
everyone was they were all, it was just all like, you're trying to corrupt our youth, and then there was the whole backmasking thing. There's hidden messages within the music,
and what didn't help, Ozzy, he bite
Ozzy's out there
off,
I mean, I'm not saying the music wasn't kind of fucked up in some regards, but it was never the thing that they were accusing it of being.
Never a threat.
No, and then one of the bands that got really roped into it was Judas Priest, and I'm like, they're not even really metal, those guys.
Yeah, those are rockers.
They're hard rockers, but those guys aren't metal. But yeah, so it was strange how between like 1986 and 1989, maybe 88 really, but 86 and 89.
89, with Shocker. I think that was
right. That was the last one. Yeah, but there was this whole movement of heavy metal and horror mixed together, because you had Trick or Treat, you had Shocker, Black Roses, Rock and Roll Nightmare, Hard Rock Zombies, Slaughterhouse Rock, Rocktober Blood. You had all of these films that were exploring and with the but one of the big ones, one of the best ones, was actually one that's technically not a heavy metal horror movie, but it features a lot of the elements that people were talking about, was The Gate.
Oh, the Gate, of course. Tibor Takacs, Canadian.
Yeah, which is a fantastic movie. And PG-13, oddly enough.
Stephen Dorff.
Yeah, Stephen Dorff's first one. I still think it's one of his best films. But that has, the character that's into heavy metal and is hearing messages.
That's right. Backward messages.
So that plays into it big time. But with the exception of that and Trick or Treat, most of those movies I don't think they're very good. No. They're just kind of goofy at times, and there's fun to be had.
But, exactly. But they weren't metalhead, and it showed. Pretty much. But Trick or Treat, they did it well, because that was really well done, and even go back to T-shirt that the character wears, and the posters on the wall.
Yeah,
you
his
could
room
be.
reminded me of my room a little bit, and
Oh
I
yeah.
with Eddie. With the Eddie character, I related to him because he's kind of an outcast, kind of a nerd. People don't know what to make of him. And so I was certainly that way in junior high and going in high school. And so I related to him very much because when Trick or Treat came out, I was 13 years old.
Did you go
So
to see it in theaters back then?
I did, yeah.
Oh yeah.
It
Wow.
only played for a week or 2 weeks in the
Yeah,
theater,
I
and
guess.
we were lucky in that Dealer Edison Entertainment Group produced the movie, and they were based out of Wilmington, North Carolina, and I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the
Okay.
time. So everything that they did got a pretty nice amount of attention
Near you.
in
Okay.
Charlotte because it was, homegrown, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie was shot in Wilmington. And so, yeah, it played, I think, for maybe 2 weeks in the big houses, 1 week in the dollar theaters, and then it was gone. It wasn't around very long at all. But I did see it, and I did
Yeah.
enjoy it at the time. But it's one that has uh, enriched itself with me over the years. Certainly, it has become one of those ones that when I go back to it, I see things that I didn't really necessarily catch when I saw it the first time because I kind of went into it for different things back then. As an adult, you revisit it, without some of the attitudes and the desires and the needs that you have when you're 13, and you go, oh, there's also playing on this whole other level which I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, story-wise and cinematography, it's awesome.
The cinematography is amazing. In fact, the guy who did it, Robert Elswit, went on to become an Academy Award-winning director of photography. He went on to work with Paul Thomas Anderson on several of his movies, and he won an Oscar for There Will Be Blood.
Cool.
So, and it was interesting. Elswit at that moment in his career was, just kind of getting started. He did, a couple of horror movies. He did that, and he did Return of the Living Dead 2 a couple years later. And they're gorgeous looking movies. And Trick or Treat, now that we've been working on this 4K restoration, it's a beautifully shot movie. The shadows and the smoke and the colors.
Yeah. It's really fantastic. It was really in the same vibe as Nightmare on Elm Street was.
Oh yeah,
it was playing in those chords, and it was quite awesome. And that movie, man, I'm so glad you guys worked on the release at last, because that movie was like you cannot found it except you were lucky and order a German Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, the Ragman release. Yeah, I've got that lying around here somewhere too. It was one of those films that just got kind of lost. It happens sometimes, because it wasn't a major studio film, and it got
and nobody know who owned that.
Yeah, it was part of a catalog within a catalog within another catalog that got bought. So it's just as many major. I've been involved with a lot of movies that had that happen to it, where it just got buried.
You have to dig pretty deep.
And sometimes when you go to the people who actually own it, they're like, "We own that? We don't. Do we really? And they're like, "Well, we'll have to dig out the paperwork." And I swear the paperwork is like housed in a box in the warehouse that you see at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just this, and never. It's like, we don't want to go in there and look through all that. So some guys don't even care. And it was kind of like that with Trick or Treat for a long time, where it was just like, oh, all right, we'll go look. It's like, oh, okay.
But we need guys like you that want to push those,
Oh, I've done that with several. Yeah, the original Stepfather was one where it reverted to the original production company. And they owned it again for 10 years and didn't realize it. And it was only, when I said, go look at the paperwork in the basement. And I go, okay, all right. Oh, shit, we do own this. So it's like that. And it was pretty much the same situation with Trick or Treat. So finally, because that one's been my white whale for a long time.
Oh, yeah?
Been wanting to re-release Trick or Treat forever. And so to finally be able to do it and do it on my own label in conjunction with Synapse Films.
Red shirt, with Don May at Synapse.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Wouldn't want to do it with anybody else, because he's the best in terms of detail and the love and attention that are given to the restorations of these films. Don is the king. There's nobody else I would want. If I had made a movie and was going to re-release it, he's the one I'd want to have handle it. Yeah.
Because sometimes transfers the blacks and the smoke and
and this is a tricky one. Because sometimes there's very deep blacks and sometimes there's very smoky backgrounds. You meant to see a little bit, and so we had this wonderful 4K scan, but then getting the color was tricky. And we had a great colorist on this, someone we work with all the time, And
Okay.
Robert Elswit, the DP, came in to approve it. He
That's
came in to look at it and say, "Yeah, this looks great. You know, tweak that a little bit." And
nice.
so
He
the
still cared. That's
yeah,
awesome.
he was great to work with. He was actually appreciative that someone, you know, it's like, God, I barely remember making this movie 35 years ago, but he came in and said, "You did a great job," and so it's approved by him.
And
So
did he liked it?
he
The
loved.
movie?
He
The
said,
movie itself?
looking back at it
Yeah.
again, it's like, you know, this is pretty good. This is some interesting stuff here, you know.
Some shots said, "Oh, okay,
Oh
yeah, did
yeah,
that
he said
well."
there was like because he said I've done some similar kind of concert kind of stuff in other films. I think this is actually probably just as good as that stuff. We did pretty good with this.
Awesome,
So
awesome.
he's very happy.
So, what are you the most proud of on that disc? What are the extras that are
Well, I can't
that
talk.
came out really well? But yeah, I know you don't talk. You can,
Yeah, I
but
can't talk 100%. Well, I can talk about a couple things.
okay, cool.
We've gotten an enormous amount of participation from a lot of people across the board on this. You know, a couple people said no, but they know there's a couple people who are out of the business or not available for obvious reasons. But you know, we're going to have a full, at least an hour long making of documentary on the thing.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, we got a commentary on there, and we're going to have
From the director.
yes, he will be involved in that. So there's going to be that, and then there's some other audio interviews, a lot of archival stuff. I've gotten. I was lucky enough to go to the. I was lucky to go to the original still photographer's house, and we scanned in a whole bunch of negatives from stuff that no one's ever seen before.
Oh, cool.
And so we have
it's gonna
that.
be in the documentary as well.
Yeah, there'll be a still gallery as well, some audio interview. And there's a whole bunch of stuff, and I can't talk about. We're going to make the official announcement probably here in about another month or so.
Okay.
Of everything that's going to be on it, but it's going to be loaded. There's going to be as
man.
much stuff as we could possibly think of to put on there.
And did you manage to get the rights for the soundtrack as well? Fast away, man! It's so good.
Oh yeah, their music. That's one thing about the film. Going back and read, like, damn, these are really good songs.
Yeah,
I mean,
just catchy, really, it's rocking. And you know, he's the singer from Flogging Molly now. You know, the singer from
Dave King. Yeah.
It's funny.
They were just here in Detroit like about 2 weeks ago. I didn't even know. I knew they were on tour, but it's like, oh shit, they were just here. But not that I would have gone. I'm not much for a concert guy, ironically enough. But
and that was the guitarist from Motorhead at the time. You know, Fast Eddie Clark.
Oh yeah, Fast Eddie Clark. Yeah, who sadly is no longer with us. But yeah, so in terms of the soundtrack, we've been working to try to make it happen.
Okay.
So I mean, we're aware everyone wants it involved. I mean, of course, we want it too.
Yeah.
But again,
I don't think it was reissued, right? I think that on vinyl and cassette back in the
days. There was a vinyl re-release, and I think a couple companies overseas have done a CD. Really, I think so. I'm not sure, but we're working. We're aware that's what people want is because what we want too. So,
but we can always put the movie on instead if the soundtrack isn't there. But what's special about this movie is so many things, but the fact that it was directed by an actor, which is not that common, and especially an actor like Charles Martin Smith, which we remember from American Gravity, and he worked with
Never Cry Wolf and Starman, and
exactly De Palma's The Untouchable was great in it.
Oh yeah, no, he was a regular working character actor that everyone really respected, and then this just ended up he'd been wanting to direct, and this kind of showed up for him, and he went, I think there's something I can do with this. He wasn't the original director for it though.
Okay.
No, the original director was Penelope Spheris of Wayne's World.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was. Not too many people do know that, and that's something we talk about in the documentary. But she was originally on board with the film because they had worked with her. She had done a film called The Boys Next Door shortly before this one, and so the producers were familiar with her from that. And but for one reason or another, it just didn't work out, and then Charles Martin Smith came in. So.
And she's a rocker, a music lover.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, she had done the Decline of the American Civilization, film. So she was very much ensconced in the punk music scene. So she was, I think, an interesting choice.
Yeah,
certainly to do that.
But Smith, I don't know him, but I don't assume he's a big metalhead. But it did great with the material.
I think he was. I think he was a very good choice because he's as being an actor, he knew how to work with actors.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie really rises and falls on the performances. I mean, Marc Price's performance is very important because you need to be sympathetic for Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand his motivations for some of the things he does. And, someone like Tony Fields, who just comes in, he has his dance background and he's very
physical,
very physically expressive. He just brings something to Sammy Kerr, which was amazing. It was just, you can believe this guy could have been a serious heavy metal rocker that people would have been into.
Exactly.
Sometimes you see these performances or these characters that are supposed to be heavy metal rockers, you don't believe for a second. It's like, no one would be into this guy. But with Sammy Kerr, you're like, oh, shit, yeah. And, all the performances are really strong. And I think he's only got the
bad
one
guys as well. The bullies. They were great.
Oh, yeah. Doug Savant's really great. And then the girlfriend, Lisa Orgolini. And everyone in that film is very, very strong. I think Gene Simmons' one scene is magnificent. He is so good in that scene, playing Nuke, the DJ.
Yep.
And what I love about that scene now, watching it, is like, I'm still not entirely sure. Is he in on it? Does he understand what's going to happen? Or does he not know?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Because the way he presents himself is like, he's almost like, here you go, kid.
Yeah.
Now the curse is upon you. But then there's also, it's like, he seems to like Eddie, so maybe he's not. I don't know. It's interesting because we never see him again.
That's right.
So, I don't know. It was interesting. And then Ozzy's
funny
little, what a perverse idea to have him as anti-rock and roll televangelist type character. What a perfect idea to put Ozzy Osbourne as that guy.
It's amazing because he was the guy that people
so many people said, look at this guy, he's biting the head off bats, for Christ's sakes. I mean, this guy's Bark at the Moon and all this stuff. I mean, it was them, and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden got a lot of shit, especially because of their albums and their mascot, Eddie and all that stuff. So it was just
Number of the Beast with Satan on it.
Yeah, and all that stuff. But the movie just
was kind of a perfect storm.
All the right people, I think, came together and they produced something that has aged very, very well. It's got a universal appeal at its core. The story is something that people can still relate to. I was at a convention just a couple of months ago, and it was after we had announced that we were doing it. And someone came up and said, thank you so much for doing this movie. I really, really understood and related to Eddie so much when I was growing up, because I was into heavy metal and horror, and kids didn't understand me either. And I really understood this movie and went, oh, okay, there's people like that who are like me too. And it was like, oh, I think about it, it kind of was the same way for me. I think that was ultimately one of the reasons I gravitated towards the movie, because it's like, this kid makes mistakes and he certainly gets in over his head, but you understand why he did and you're sympathetic, because he doesn't want, on the one hand, he wants revenge on these bullies for treating him the way that he does, and the betrayal and the laughter that's been directed at him. But just when he realizes how bad things are going, it's like, no, I didn't want this.
Exactly.
This, and it's, that was a very easy thing to relate to. And I think Marc Price was a very interesting choice for that character, because at the time he was not known for playing a dark kind of, shaded character.
Yeah, he was in Family Ties.
Right. Mark Skippy Price, as he's, been known. And so he, taking a part that certainly had a lot more of a dark edge to it, a lot more complicated. It was certainly, this wasn't just Skippy, liking heavy metal. It was a much different character. And I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. And, seeing back this film again today, and I realized you got some Carrie elements.
Oh, very much so, with the big prom scene when, all that happens. And the
revenge.
Oh, yeah. There's very much that sort. And again,
But it's subtle, it's just there, but,
it's there, and it's well, and again, I was 13 when this movie came out, and I was going through a lot of the nerd, and I had glasses, and I liked horror movies, and I was,
and it wasn't cool back then. Today, with pop culture and that horror and TV, The Walking Dead, and all that stuff.
Oh, people love that stuff now, but back then it was just sort of like that weird shit that kids are into. It's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. What T-shirt is he wearing? what the fuck?
Yeah. So like, and
of...
why is he wearing a dark, why is he wearing black clothes? And why is he, kind of like not talking to anybody? Who's that weirdo and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And, it was not hard for me to kind of gravitate towards movies like that showed, even in movies like The Gate, where, you see like, the Terry character, being sort of this ostracized kid who didn't really fit in anywhere.
I really need to see that movie again. It's been so long, too long, but it was great. The stop motion effects, they were
they were great. The forced perspective work and the miniatures and the oversized models and all that stuff. That movie is fantastic, and it's really scary and intense. There's some stuff in there that's like, damn, this pushed the limits in terms of really kind of this will fuck with a kid's head a little bit, which I respect that. I respect that.
And I don't know if they re-released that movie. I don't know if it's been,
The Gate?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it. We did re-release it a couple times.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's part of the Vestron line from
nice. I need to see that. I only have the VHS.
No, I produced the Blu-ray back in 2009, I think it was, and then I did the Blu-ray again a few years ago. So it's back out there.
So wrapping up that little interview, thanks so much for Trick or Treat.
Of course.
Can't wait to get my hand on this new Blu-ray. So we can hope it's gonna be available by the end of 2023.
That's the goal. If it's not the very end, it'll be at the very beginning. But we're wrapping things up right now, so awesome. It's something that we're very eager to get out there, and everything has gone very, very, knock on wood, it's gone very well so far. So
awesome.
I just listened to the 5-1 over at Don May's house the other day, and it sounds amazing. It sounds so cool.
And I want to, I'm really excited, but I really want to ask a very last question. Usually, my guests, we talk about music and movies, and I wanted to ask a different question for you at the end. What would be your top 3 of your favorite movies you worked on? Re-release.
Oh God, that's hard to say.
Top 3. You can be a top 5 if you have a hard time choosing.
There's been so. I mean, it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm really not trying to. I've worked on so many.
I know. Let's push. Just Dessert. Okay. Creep Show. That's probably one of the biggest.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would say. Okay, if I had to pick 5, Creep Show, certainly that one was majorly important. Another film called Effects, which was from a lot of the same people who worked on Creep Show.
FX?
Yeah, EFFECTS, not the other one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a documentary. Okay.
Yeah. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yeah.
Is another one I'm very proud of. Monster Squad, which is getting ready to come out again here. What a couple other ones. Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. The Silent Night, Deadly Night, 3, 4, and 5. That was a lot of fun to work on. I enjoyed that. This one, obviously, Trick or Treat's one that's going to be on there. God, there are just so many. I couldn't, and I wouldn't want to leave. Night of the Creeps was a great one that was a big one for me that I was really proud of.
What was the hardest one to do?
Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead. I worked on a document that was really difficult. That was a fraught process. And then
more brains are.
No, that was Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, Return. Okay, okay. Sorry.
I produced a documentary called One for the Fire. That was on the original Night of the Living Dead. But in terms of discs, I think the most difficult disc was Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, the 4th Texas Chainsaw movie.
Oh yeah, with the cover you had to alter.
Oh, there was that, and I couldn't even. Yeah, there was just a lot of rules that were enforced upon me. Not by Shout Factory, they were great, but it was the owner of the film that was like, can't talk about Matthew McConaughey, can't talk about. It was just a bunch of bullshit. So that made that one really, really difficult to do.
But they did work on that movie. It's their performances. Well, they were on the poster. That's such a.
Well, what happened with that movie was weird because back when that movie came out, Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey both did this film, and then very shortly after that, they both did big breakout movies: Time to Kill for Matthew McConaughey, and then Jerry Maguire for Renee Zellweger. So this was like 1996, and they were both like the studios were going to, like this is like their coming out part. They're going to be stars after
Heartthrobs. Yeah.
And then they had done this Chainsaw movie, and suddenly people around them were like, oh, we don't want this chainsaw movie coming out and fucking any of that up. So they tried to bury it and just, don't use them in the advertising, blah, blah, blah. They were very, and so, but I figured by the time I worked on it, who would have cared?
Exactly.
And they've talked about the movie in interviews when it's come up. Neither one of them is ashamed of it. They're both, is it the best movie they've ever done? No, but they both give really good performances in it. And it was a chance to do a leading role back at a time where no one was giving them leading roles. And so I figured there'd be no problem, but the studio, and it wasn't either one of them, by the way, that was giving me any of this. It was the studio just like, well, we still don't want to piss them off. I'm like, come on.
Sissies.
Yeah, it really was a bullshit attitude. And so it made making that disc a very, very difficult one. But what made it worthwhile was getting to work with Kim Henkel and a lot of the cast.
That's right.
They were great. All the people who worked on the movie that I got to interview or do commentaries with were fantastic. But it was just this... The distributor still kind of like, oh,
politics.
It was. So that one, I'll always remember that one being, it's just like, God damn, this shouldn't be this. And there was a lot of stuff we couldn't use. We couldn't use because we don't want Matthew in there, we don't want Renee.
It's sad because that's the fan that are paying for that, and they cannot get what they deserve. And
I want to tell some of these people around McConaughey and Zellweger, again, not them, but some of the people around them going, they've both made much worse movies than Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is not one that they should be like, oh God, I mean, I'm sorry.
And Texas 4, it's fun to watch.
There's a lot. I mean, is it a great film? I don't think it probably is necessarily, but there is a lot of moments. There has some great moments and some really great ideas. And at the end of the day, it's a film that tried. They were trying to do something different. Yeah. And I think Zellweger and McConaughey are a blast in that picture.
McConaughey is batshit crazy. He's out of control.
he's giving the performance that movie needs.
Exactly.
And Zellweger's right there with him, and she's dogged and giving it her all, and it's athletic.
And she's pretty, and she's good to look at.
I mean, it works.
Look,
it's one of those films where it's like, look, okay. But now you can do a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and it's like, oh, it's fine. Jessica Biel was in one, and it's like, oh, that's fine. And Alexandra Daddario was in Chainsaw 3D, which, again, has its problems too. But I've never heard her go, oh, I'm ashamed of it.
People need to start somewhere, anyways.
Yeah, at the end of the day, and again, if you stumble upon an interview with either Zellweger or McConaughey where the movie comes up, they have no problems talking about it at all. And why should they? They've both won Oscars. They're fine. They're doing,
exactly.
Their careers did just fine. They're not.
It can't hurt them.
It's like it's really, So, but again, it's not. I don't think it's them. I really don't think it's them at all. But I think it's all the people around them.
Yeah. But that's a shame. But a last suggestion for people out there that are a big fan of the Texas Chainsaw franchise, I'm sure you've seen it too, The Butcher Boys by Kim Henkel that he wrote. Yeah. And it got some strong Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes.
Very much so, yes. It very much feels like this could be happening down the road from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
And it reminded me a lot of the fourth one, which has batshit crazy ideas like that.
It does.
Guy
the government showing up and being involved. It's like, what the hell is all this about?
Yeah.
It's a very strange. Again, it's like, whether it works or not, I don't know. But it's like they try something different. Give it
exactly. Yeah. I saw it at Fantasia, the film festival in Montreal. Years ago, and it was a blast. Henkel was supposed to be in town that day, and I think he couldn't come in the end. But there was a blast. But tonight, speaking with you, talking with you about all the Grease movies was a blast. Michael, thanks again for your time.
You're welcome.
Looking forward to the next releases of Red Shirt and all the great companies you work with, and especially not Ragman, Trick or Treat.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate that, and again, I appreciate the kind words and the enthusiasm, and we'll see what comes next.
We'll keep in touch.
All right, man.
Cheers, Michael.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Great to meet you, Mark.
Thank you. Hi there.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat about, two of my favorite things in life, which happen to be included in the very same movie, Metal and Horror. It's been done before, after, but Trick or Treat, or Ragman, as they say in Germany, um, is the ultimate Metal and Horror movie. That's the best of all of them that came out in the 80s, and there were a few back recently, even Deadgasm and films like that. But to me, that's I won't say masterpiece, because nothing's perfect, but almost.
I'm glad you didn't say
Almost.
that. We saw another one yesterday. There was a double screening of Trick or Treat and a movie called Demons from Italy.
Oh,
and that's got
that's
Motley
a
Crue,
good one.
and it's got
Exciter, I think, Billy Idol.
Yeah.
That's right, from Lamberto Bava. Oh yeah, that I love that movie. It's a crazy.
And it takes place in an old movie theater, and then we were watching it in an old movie theater, so it was a movie inside of a movie inside of a real life event. It was fun.
Wow, where was that?
At the Palace. Didn't you set me up at the Palace? Wasn't that you that helped set this whole thing up? No, you helped me set up. You helped introduce me to the guy that's got the Blu-ray video coming out.
No, I don't, but I wish I had, because I'm really happy about that. Because that's one of the things. I had to buy a German Blu-ray to watch the movie again, of course, on YouTube, but we don't want to watch that shit.
They have a new Blu-ray coming out. It's coming out. I think. Oh, you know about that?
Yeah, I know, because I had Michael Felsher, who's that red shirt who produced.
Didn't you introduce me to Michael Felsher?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I'm only doing your podcast list. I thought you had done me a favor, and it was a mistake. I'm sorry. I got to go.
But Michael, I had him for an interview to chat about that 4K re-release that's going to be coming out before the end of the year. It's going to be a great Christmas gift for all the Trick or Treat fan out there. So yeah,
they couldn't pull off Halloween, but that's okay.
Yeah, they tried, because I think there's a lot of moving parts. They try to get rights for the music as well.
I can only imagine. Yeah, they said they might have the whole album as part of it, as part of the release. Yeah, and all these kind of stuff. Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I have the cassette. That's actually my wife LP. So thanks again to take the time to talk about that movie. But that podcast is about metal and horror, and I have to ask, the ultimate question, Marc. Are you a metalhead?
Am I a metalhead? I became a metalhead during the movie. Actually, we got the Fastway soundtrack before it was done. We heard like a rough version of it, so we knew it was really good. And I personally think that's the reason why the movie is still around with us. I think that people appreciate that soundtrack, and Ozzy and Gene Simmons. I don't think it's me. Let's put it that way. I don't think it's my fine acting.
Oh man, you're too humble, because it's been done before. Metal bands in movies, and sometimes, most of the times, people portraying those characters, those metalheads, are a little off, or a lot off, and you were right on it. So I'm assuming you weren't a metalhead, but what kind of research did you do to get into the character? Because it's spot on, it works.
Well, I moved with a group of metalheads, and I studied natural habitat and surroundings. But I think I might have worn the same outfit for a week.
Okay.
And I know I made a little tape of the audio from the opening monologue, and I gave it to the director, which is kind of a bold thing to do. You're not supposed to necessarily. Sometimes things like that work out, and other times they totally backfire. Remember the girl that was up for Catwoman or something, or Batgirl? Do you remember this story? Sean Young. Do you remember that actress, Sean Young? And she
definitely.
Woman or something, or Batgirl, or one of those, and showed up at the director's office in the costume and everything. She wanted the part so bad, and that just worked against her. They were like,
I think it was a Catwoman. I remember actually that, and it didn't work.
So I dropped off the monologue in an audio tape, and that helped, I think. Also, the director, Charlie Martin Smith, is an actor, and people know him as Toad in American Graffiti, and he was Starman and The Untouchables and all kinds of great movies, including Never Cry Wolf, which is one of his best. He's in it alone. He survives wilderness in Alaska, something like that. Great movie. And but being an actor himself, he understood actors' needs and stuff, so he was extra nice to me. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was good. I'm very blessed to have been a part of that. I was 17.
And he was a pretty big deal at the time. You know, American Graffiti, that was already a classic, and that's the question I was wondering. Was it great to have an actor on set because he understood acting, but sometimes they try to direct, but they can't.
No, 100%. This was his first movie. He's directed a lot of movies since then. I don't know if you know that. He's become and one of his niches is animal movies. So if it's Air Bud, a dog that can play basketball, or a whale that has a tail that needs medical help, or whatever the animal, or a dog that finds its way home or something like that, that's Charlie Martin Smith directed it.
Yeah, that's cool. He's great with animals. And obviously with metalheads too, because, you know, it worked.
Same thing.
Yeah, sometimes in the mosh pit, we're all animals, which is crazy. So how did you get cast in the first place? How did you heard first about that project?
I remember the first time I saw a mosh pit. I was a teenager at the Roxy on Sunset, and I think it was for the Cramps.
Oh, nice!
Remember that band?
Love them.
Yeah. I used to do a show at the Roxy. I was a little kid comedian, and there were singers and dancers, and it was a kid show. We would come in on Sundays. And so, you know, there'd be somebody passed out in their own vomit backstage, the smell and everything. We'd come into this club after this crazy Saturday party night, you know, on Sunday morning. We'd show up for rehearsal and stuff. And it was quite the scene. But the guy from the Cramps, and that's how I got in, by the way, as a youngster, because I knew the people that worked there and stuff, you know, because I was doing the show there. And so I remember when we stuck in to go see the Cramps, he was so nuts, that lead singer. I don't remember his name, but great show.
He's Lux Interior. He passed away, but Lux Interior, that was his stage name, which is really weird because he's a weird guy.
Yes, he was. I remember he took the microphone and he stuffed it in his pants. And I couldn't help but think, I have to use that microphone tomorrow morning. What are you doing? Hey. Spray that down with Lysol.
Yeah, man, that's awesome because the Cramps, it's not.
It was a show.
Was a great show.
It was. I remember it. Yeah, I don't remember all the shows I go to. I've been to some amazing shows I don't even remember. A friend came to me recently. He said, "Remember that time we went to go see Eric Clapton and George Harrison came out and played for like an hour at the end with him?" And I was like, "No, I don't remember that."
At least you remember your lines and your joke when you're doing a show.
Not always. I don't remember that either. Now that I'm getting older.
Can you remember how you heard about the project in the first place?
Well, it was an audition, you know.
Okay.
They script and you read the script and then you go in, or you pretend to read the script. But in this case, I actually read the script, and I wanted this role. Keanu Reeves was up for it.
And okay. And
so
did you have a long hair at the time?
Could have hired Keanu Reeves, but they did put Keanu Reeves in their next movie, which was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Wow!
And the movie they directed, or I don't know if they didn't direct it, the producers of Trick or Treat, the movie they produced before Trick or Treat, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Oh wow! It's fitting in some ways because you know he's burned Boogeyman as well. They got some of the same, you know, eerie moves and you know, nightmarish ambience, and of course, slasher. They were a big thing already, you know, since the Halloween came out in '78, and there was a big boom in '81, and you know, over the whole '80s, there were so many of them, and I cannot believe there weren't a second one. Yeah, it's so burned, perfectly burned.
Lighting your cigarette on a gas stove doesn't always pan out.
Oh man.
Sammy Kerr, let's take a moment to talk about Tony Fields. He's no longer with us.
Exactly. I was about to ask. Yeah.
And
how was it?
That's sad because he was such a great guy and a super talent with physicality. You know, he was a dancer. Did you know that he was a solid gold dancer?
Yeah, and he acted in a bunch of music videos as well for Michael Jackson and Queen. It's a pretty big
like
thing.
Jackson Bad video is one of the ones he's featured in. He's one of the gang members, and you see him all through it. he was quite the guy. We didn't hang out a lot and buddy up during the shoot and stuff because he wanted to keep it a little bit where I'd be scared of him,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was probably for the best. I don't know. I would have liked to have hung out with him more, but we worked together and we worked on like energy, and he would like send like his energy things to me and stuff. It was crazy.
Oh wow! Can you remember one of the big SFX scenes? Anything gone wrong or something? Some cool memories from that?
Well, let's see. I know that there's a stunt that I'm in where I'm attached to a harness or something, and it pulls me like it was supposed to be like in the Back to the Future when Michael J. Fox strums the guitar and he shoots back across the room. And so they had me hooked up with the same kind of device or whatever. And I don't think it went quite as well, but we've had a few stunts in the movie that didn't quite work out. They just left him in. There's a car that is supposed to flip over and blow up or whatever, and it kind of leans a little. Anyway, they sometimes they have no choice. They're like, okay, print it, we're moving on.
It's great that you mentioned Michael J. Fox, with whom you played, in Family Ties for a while, and of course, Back to the Future. That's one of my favorite movie of all time. I got married, and my wife, she came in the DeLorean, which was exactly as in the movie, with the music, the score playing. So I'm a fan.
Congratulations on the wedding, by the way. How long ago was that?
2016, not that long ago.
All right. See, it goes by fast. Congratulations to you. That sounds like a fun wedding.
Yeah, because I'm a big rocker, of course. I like Trick or Treat, and the whole theme of that wedding. So a little parenthesis, it was about music. Because we're a music lover. There's gonna be music, from the start until the very end, ending by a big metal concert for the people that stayed late, not the uncle and the grands and all, but for the lifers. And when we realized that, it was like Back to the Future, because every decade it moved up. 60s and 70s during the dinner, it's quiet, and then 70s a little bit more rock and then metal. And that summer, Christopher Lloyd, he came to Montreal at the festival, and I said to my wife, if I get to take a selfie with Christopher Lloyd, Doc Emmett Brown, we're gonna rent that DeLorean from that guy that remodeled his DeLorean to look exactly from the movie. And I did that selfie that night, and we booked that DeLorean, and it was just
That's where
perfect.
You are in Montreal? That's where you are?
I'm sorry?
That's where you are in Montreal?
Yes, exactly, Montreal. So Mark, you have to come to Montreal at Just for Laugh, the comedy festival.
I've been there. It's fantastic. It's
Oh,
such a beautiful.
I didn't know. You have to come back.
I enjoyed Quebec, and I think we played at a place called Pub St. Paul. It's been a while, but it was so much fun. And the women there are so beautiful. Oh my gosh. In Montreal, You guys have the most beautiful women in the world.
Yes, that's what I heard. Quebec.
They keep the ugly women at Vermont. They don't let them in. They have a roadblock.
Oh yeah, so you have to come back to Montreal to do a comedy show. And do you talk about? Is that something you're proud that you did? Ragman, aka Trick or Treat.
Oh, I'm proud of it. Yeah, sure. It's I'm always amazed people still care about, but I think it's the soundtrack is why. And Ozzy and Gene Simmons, pretty cool to work with them, and I got a little glimpse into Ozzy Osbourne before everyone else did, because everyone knows about Ozzy now with the reality show and all these years, and we all know who he is. But
Right.
Back then, he was the demon of darkness. There was an illusion of nobody understood, and I kind of got a little glimpse that Sharon runs the show, and he's really kind of a friendly, fun, loving, wonderful, warm guy, and not at all some demon of darkness.
But he added to that mystique, over the year. There was that time, he had a bat and a dove once, and that old persona with, Bark at the Moon. He's made up as a werewolf. So he
bit the head
liked
off the bat, and then they had to test the
rabies.
they had to test him to see if he had, because they anyway, I forget something about.
Yeah,
They were worried about that, the bat might have caught rabies from him. Okay.
That's a good one.
And I'm a professional comedian. Can I screw that up anymore? It's early here, people. We had a late night last night. We had a very late night last night.
Oh man, that's great. You know, comedy and horror, you know, it's almost the same thing because you get, you know, laughs out of people, and horror it get, you know, scares, you know, it jolts us. So and you know, horror comedies, that's a thing. There's a lot of horror comedies out there. So, you know, you push
There's a lot of
same.
horrible comedies out there too. But we I don't know if the Trick or Treat ended up one or the other. I think that was my complaint about it, that it should have been scarier or it should have been funnier. It kind of ended up a little less than each, you know. But people love it. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to be like that girl from Snow White that ruins her own movie, right?
Definitely. Oh man. So thank you.
But if you
Thank
think about it, Sammy Kerr, the monster in our movie, he is kind of stalking me. Weird. Okay.
Yeah, and he needs you to get out there and, you know, get his revenge. You know the story. It's a bit silly, but it's part of the charm. It's great, you know. And as I said, it's not only, you know, the soundtrack, Fastway. It's rocking. It works. You know, the posters in Ragman's bedroom, they're all great. You know, this cool bands, Anthrax and Megadeth and the Metallica, you know, all the great bands.
Rhett Topham. Hopefully I pronounced his name right. Rhett was just out of college when he wrote it. Maybe even in college still when he wrote it. And then Michael Murphy and Joel Sosan, who are the producers that worked on Excellent Adventure, as well as the what was the other one I said? They did the Freddy Krueger.
Yeah,
Nightmare.
The second one.
They were great to work with.
Man, it's awesome, and now the fans can get their hands on. They will before Christmas on a freaking great 4K Blu-ray loaded with extras. I'm sure you did interviews for that as well.
Yes, indeed. And so that Red Shirt Pictures, and there's another company involved. I'm not sure, but
Synapse.
Yeah. Oh, so you know all about it. So how do you know all about this? But you didn't introduce me to them? You're not the guy that called and said they
No. I wish I was the one that made the Blu-ray happen, but I don't. No, actually, I've been writing on music and horror for a while. I've been writing for a Rumor magazine based in Toronto. It's a big mag, you know, internationally renowned. And I got this podcast, and I write for a Quebec website called Horror Quebec, where I do reviews. So, you know, that's my nice. Jam.
Nice. We're going to Toronto next month in November, and we're doing some special shows with, you know, people know me as Ragman from your world, right? But some people know me as Skippy from the show Family Ties with Michael J. Fox, and I'm performing with a guy who was on the show Seinfeld. He played Kenny Banya, so he's the guy who says it's gold, Jerry, gold, and people love him. Hysterical Steve Heitner, really funny off stage as well as on stage. And so we're going on tour. We're going to be in Toronto in November. And we're doing one show that's just all for Michael J. Fox Foundation. We're going to raise some money.
Oh, man, that's great. Awesome. Yeah. And so what is the date exactly? So I'll put it in the article.
It's a little difficult for me to remember dates, but it's coming up. It's in November, and it's in Toronto at Joker's, which is in Richmond.
Okay, so for all the Torontonian out there, so go check out Marc's comedy show with, you know, I'm a big Seinfeld fan as well. I love that. I wish Toronto was closer. So next time you swing to Montreal, swing by. I'm going to be there.
He had a show.
Oh, yeah?
Deal.
Awesome. So
I can't wait to.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay in the conversation. That's why it's cutting a little bit. But, you know, that was a blast to have you on my show. I'm sorry?
And there's a little delay in my brain, so you'll have to forgive me. It has nothing to do with technology. You hear me? There we go. Okay, we're back. We're back. I'm back. If it were only that easy. If it were only that easy to make a comeback, just swipe. That's what Hollywood does when they're through with you. They swipe right or swipe left, or I don't Tinder. How do I know?
No, me too. Thanks, Mark. That was a blast having you on the show, and keep up the good work. And hopefully, we're gonna see you in Montreal sometime soon.
I can't wait to get back. Love your guts, Chris, and no false comedy. I mean, no false metal.
Exactly. Cheers, Ragman.